All right, good evening, everyone. This is now our City Council study session for November 22nd, 2021. And tonight's meeting is being held both virtually and in person. And we'll call this meeting to order. Teresa, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Excused.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember J. Raj.
I'm right here.
Councilmember Malinga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
All right, thank you, everyone. I don't believe we have any announcements, reports, and presentations. I do want to make a quick comment, Council. Under our other discussion items this evening, we will be talking about the special focus areas. So just to let you know, we will have another agenda item as we go forward here. Tonight, agenda items for council discussion begin with ordinance number 6843, and we will welcome Director Tate.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, City Council members, and Mayor. This evening, the first item on your agenda is Ordinance 6843. I would call this a housekeeping type of ordinance. It covers a lot of different chapters of City Code. So you'll see in Ordinance 6843 that there's 4 chapters of Title 19, 1 chapter of Title 15, and 4 chapters of Title 13. So when you look through this ordinance, there's a lot of pages to it, but essentially the purpose of the ordinance is to align language from one chapter to the next that describes when the city assesses development fees and when we collect those fees. So as you move in the existing code, as you move from one chapter to the next, there's some nuanced differences that at times create sort of discrepancies, especially as you get close to the end of the year and you're transitioning from one year to the next year. So we really want to articulate in these code changes that we are assessing development fees at the time that we determine an application is complete. And we do that for building permits, we do that for impact fees, and we do that for utility system development charges all the same way. And then we collect those fees at the time of permit issuance or in advance of permit issuance. So that is the effect or the purpose of the ordinance. And happy to answer any questions and hoping to schedule this for council action on December 6th. Thank you.
Questions for Director Tate, Council? I'm not seeing any questions tonight, Jeff, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda, Council, is the Deputy Mayor's selection discussion process. And I will remind you that tonight is just for discussions. There are no nominations tonight, and there is no voting tonight. That will take place at our next City Council meeting on December 6th. And joining us this evening is also City Attorney Como, who will help us in the process. I will begin by just quickly briefing and saying that our Deputy Mayor selection process is part of our Council Rules of Procedure, Section 12.1. And basically, any council member, and this is under Section A, let me read first of all, I'll just kind of read the process here. So annually or more often as deemed appropriate, the members of the City Council by majority vote shall designate one of their members as Deputy Mayor for a 1-year time frame, except as provided in Section 12.1, paragraphs G and H. Elections will be held no later than the last council meeting of the year. And under 12.1A, any member of the City Council who has served on the council for 1 year at the beginning for that council member's term as Deputy Mayor may be nominated for the position of Deputy Mayor by having the council member's name placed in nomination by a council member. That nomination, the nomination of a council member for the position of Deputy Mayor does not require a second, and a council member may nominate himself or herself for the position. Nominations for the position of deputy mayor shall be made by members of the city council on the dates of election for the deputy mayor. And also, in connection with the selection of the deputy mayor, it is strongly suggested that council members approach the election in an open, transparent, and respectful manner, avoiding anything that jeopardizes harmony among council members. The council member receiving the majority of votes cast by the members of the city council shall be elected deputy mayor. The council member may vote for him or herself. The names of all nominees for the position of deputy mayor shall be included in one vote. If no single council member receives a majority of the votes cast, a second vote / ballot between the two nominees who receive the largest number of votes will be held. That is the process of our selection of deputy mayor. Again, that will take place on December 6th at the next city council meeting. City Attorney Como.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for going over the process. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and Council. I believe that Section 12 covers the process, and the Deputy Mayor has covered it in great detail tonight. The only thing I will add is that Council will also be asked to confirm the Deputy Mayor in January with the new council member present and voting. But if anyone has questions, I'm available to take those questions tonight or during the week, and then we will be taking those nominations from the floor on December 6th before voting.
Any questions, council? I don't see anybody having any questions this evening, Kendra. All right, council, thank you very much. We will look forward to our December 6th meeting. All right, that moves us into our community wellness discussion items. And for that portion of the meeting, I will turn this over to Councilmember Malinga.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. For this part of the agenda, we're having our annual Joint Council and Human Services Committee meeting. And I would like to turn it over to Director Jeff Tate to get us started with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening again, Council. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Kyla Wright. Kyla is our city's Human Services Program Coordinator, and she's going to help navigate through our annual meeting, which we didn't have an annual meeting in 2020. Last time the Human Services Committee was before City Council was in 2019. And then I'll ask if any of the Human Service Committee members, there's several of them that are participating in this evening's discussion, so you may see or hear from a few of them this evening, but turn it over to Kyla and let Kyla kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you so much for the council to give us time to share a little bit about the work the Human Services Committee does on behalf of Auburn and on behalf of Human Services. I will share my screen. Give me just a moment to get the PowerPoint up and into presentation mode. Okay, are you all seeing that? Great, thanks. So during our time tonight, I will provide a short overview of the Community Needs Assessment, which is the guiding document for this program and the Human Services Committee. Give a quick update about our Equity and Inclusion Pilot Program. Share some information about the quarterly reports and demographic reporting that's completed by funded programs, and provide details about our upcoming application process for the 2023-2024 funding years. And then we'll open it up for a little bit of discussion, questions, conversation between Council and our Human Services Committee. So first off, just a brief summary of our Human Services Committee's role as a volunteer committee that makes funding decisions to this body and draws on their professional expertise, community knowledge to interpret the data and trends and needs as a part of that process. So we meet monthly on the fourth Monday of each month. We had a meeting just earlier today, and in addition to those monthly meetings, especially during the funding season, have that application review. Generally, that is for our general fund and CDBG dollars. And with the pandemic, have incorporated our CDBG CV, which stands for coronavirus, funding dollars, which are unique to the pandemic. So with the needs assessment, the community needs assessment is a key document for the Human Services Committee and for Human Services Program. It was developed in the latter half of 2019 and provides an in-depth qualitative and quantitative data on the needs of Auburn residents. You all might remember from your time on council when Cloudburst presented the needs assessment in November of 2019, or from in previous presentations that my supervisor, Joy Scott, and Jeff may have presented in over the last year and a half. So some of the key findings to this needs assessment are to prioritize the budget allocations to enhance and increase housing, emergency shelter, and supportive service resources that align with local and national best practices. The program and system alignment with housing first philosophies, ensuring low barriers and quality supportive services so that folks have access to basic housing, shelter, and service needs, and to implement a system navigation approach that promotes streamlined and trauma-informed access to resources and housing. So this is a very brief overview. The document itself is actually a riveting read if it's up your alley, but quite a bit lengthier than this. But this highlights a bit about what guides the Human Services and Human Services Committee in our assessment of needs and applications that come across. So the pandemic has had significant impacts on Auburn as a community. In human services, we've seen the pandemic really have an impact and increased need for demand of existing services. There's also been a real shift in how agencies and programs have had to deliver services, and in some cases, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, suspend service delivery in order to comply with public health guidelines. So that was a real challenge that agencies and programs have really skillfully adapted and really taken great strides and great lengths to make sure that services are continuing to be provided to the best of their ability, given the circumstances. We've also had, and one of the ways the pandemic has impacted human services is really, it should say, increased regional coordination across South King County cities. So from the beginning of the pandemic to present day, there's been a real coordination with our neighboring cities to collaborate with programs and really align ways that we support and work with agencies. A number of agencies that serve Auburn residents also serve residents in neighboring cities across South King County. And so really making sure that to streamline services, to help streamline services to Auburn residents, making sure that agencies are able to streamline the work that they do and information that they receive from neighboring cities as well. So with that, kind of on the agency side, there's been increased partnerships across agencies and programs. And that's something that agencies have already been doing. A lot of services and programs overlap in a lot of ways. And because of the increased need and because of the kind of limitations and efforts that programs are putting in, it's really required a lot of partnerships and coordination across agencies themselves. And we've also seen additional short-term funding through CDBG CV applications for agencies and programs. A lot of that funding has been awarded to cities, Auburn included, to make sure that agencies and programs have funding for COVID and pandemic related needs. And so those dollars have to go out in a coordinated fashion across agencies. So that requires a lot of coordination across cities and across programs. So I mentioned earlier that the pandemic has really increased demand for existing services. I'd say one of the only brand new COVID impacts is COVID itself. So COVID treatment and testing is, I think, probably the only brand new need that arose from the pandemic. The other pieces have already existed in some way, shape, or form, but has just impacted more people. So in looking at trends, emerging trends from the pandemic is assessing what those impacts are, and especially disproportionate impacts. So things that have already disproportionately been impacting our community members have increasingly been the case over the pandemic. And of course, in addition to folks who are already experiencing challenges and hardships, there's a new set of folks who maybe have not had to reach out for resources in the same way before. So we're seeing more disparate impacts for folks who have struggled with various things even pre-pandemic, and had some challenges that have been really that the programs and agencies that we fund have been able to support, in addition to folks that maybe are just experiencing some of those challenges as a result of the pandemic. And so really thinking about what those short-term and long-term strategies and needs are. So in some ways where agencies and programs made what they thought might be temporary shifts in 2020 to service delivery, really they are taking some time to refocus and resettle, as we all are, recognizing that the impacts of the pandemic will be with us for longer than maybe we originally thought. So some of those measures that agencies were taking at the beginning of the pandemic, really taking a look to see what needs to stay long-term and what was really just necessary for a temporary period. Another piece that we are keeping an eye on and really want to make sure that we get good data on coming up is immigrant and refugee arrivals, which of course has been happening pre-pandemic. There's lots of agencies and programs that specialize and focus in immigrant and refugee arrival support, and with recent developments in Haiti and Afghanistan and a couple of other countries that are experiencing some extreme turmoil, we expect to see some changes, and we'll be keeping an eye on what that looks like in the future. So shifting gears a little bit to our equity and inclusion pilot. So we are coming up on the end of the first year where we have had in Human Services a pilot program that provides financial reimbursement of up to $1,000 annually for the programs receiving $25,000 or more each year in human service funding. And those programs are required to have their staff and decision makers go through an equity and inclusion training, 4 hours of equity and inclusion training per year on topics related to institutional racism, power and privilege, and implicit bias. So 6 of the programs have completed the training using in-house equity staff or training that's already incorporated into their existing roles. And 2 of the programs have requested reimbursement for training through that pilot program. So I'll be sending out a survey for programs to complete so that I have more information in the program on how to improve and streamline the process for next year and for future iterations of this contract component. But was really interested to see that a lot of the programs already have equity inclusion built into their practices in their program or in their agency, and the folks that don't already have found training programs and are requesting reimbursement that helps lessen that maybe financial barrier or other barriers to receiving that training. So for our programs, for all of our programs, all of the funded programs receive reimbursement on a quarterly basis. And that's based on completed service units in their contract, based on numbers that were included in their contract and number of residents served. And a sample of the quarterly report begins on page 21 of your council packets. It's attachment number 1. For that packet. And it includes the reports that agencies complete, include the quantitative data about the program's progress, in addition to a narrative that provides context for that data, any additional trends, hardships that the program is going through, success stories that the program has experienced. And those stories are what's included in the weekly roundup that you all receive. Those stories in the roundup are pulled from these narratives from the quarterly reports. And on page 26 of your packet, that is the first page of a template, a sample of the demographics report. And so each program is required to complete an end-of-year demographics report, which details a little bit more information about who is receiving the services. So that is completed each year at the end of each year with the 4th quarter reports. So we'll receive that information in January for the 2021 funding year. And from the year to date, a little bit of a snapshot of the information that, or the services that have been provided this year from our funded programs. I have it broken out here into general fund and the CDBG CV programs. So just a high level overview is for our general fund, 6,038 bed nights were provided across our agencies providing shelter services, 1,218 case management hours across the funded programs. 822 households have received eviction prevention, either through legal services or financial assistance, rent assistance. 36 residents have received job training services. And across all of the programs funded through general funds, 11,051 Auburn residents have been served. And that's just in quarters 1 through 3, so through the end of September of this year. And for our CDBG CV funds, it's a slightly different service scope, and these funds are for programs serving Auburn residents with impacts directly related to COVID and the pandemic. So there were 31 residents receiving childcare services. There have been 10,888 meals delivered. 104 households received eviction prevention specific to pandemic. So in addition to the general fund residents receiving rental assistance or eviction prevention. And there are 7 individuals receiving employment training and 307 total residents served with the CDBG CV dollars. Sorry. Okay, so I want to move on a little bit to, so those are some of the numbers from the agencies and programs that provide services, and want to take a few moments here to highlight some agencies themselves with some success stories. And truly all of the agencies could have airtime and success stories. And you've seen all of the programs at some point this year in that weekly update. And then there are the agencies that provided information and came to the study session in July. So those 5 agencies there. So just want to take a little bit of time to highlight some success stories, and I'll actually pass it on to one of our Human Service Committee members, Kelly, if you wouldn't mind hopping in here and want to read for our success story for Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee, which some folks might know as AJAC.
Yeah, of course. So the Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee, Advanced Manufacturing Prep Training Center, they build critical capacity for advanced manufacturing workforce development, serving a community that otherwise lacks nearby access to higher education, leading to living wage employment. So this is what they said. During the third quarter, AJAC signed 2 new Auburn residents into apprenticeship and held 1 AMP session at Green River College's Auburn campus. AJAC also partnered with community-based organizations and public workforce agencies, including El Centro de la Raza, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, ACRS, Auburn WorkSource, TRAC, Associates in Workforce Central, to promote the AMP and MA programs. 1 Auburn resident inquired about the MA program and met directly with AJAC staff to begin the enrollment process in January, when AJAC plans to offer in-person MA training in partnership with Green River College.
Thanks so much, Kelly. So this is one that I thought would be a great representation for the collaboration and connections that agencies are really leaning into. It's not unique to pandemic times, but has certainly been really reinforced over the last almost 2 years how critical it is to make sure that all of the agencies are connected and how they really support each other and getting them through and making sure that folks are aware and utilizing these services that are available. We've got a couple of other success stories, and there's a couple of committee members who I think will be available. Kelly, I'll have you on standby, but either we'll have Janine, if you're available, if your mic is working, to take the next one, and then I'll ask Jason to do the third. Just a heads up for you all. But Janine, if you are able to hop in and share the success story for childcare resources, that would be great.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay, good. Hi, this is Janine Lacasse. Child care resources, child care financial assistance provides child care subsidies for low and moderately low income families who need help paying for child care and do not qualify for the state subsidy. Because of the scholarship, I have not had to live paycheck to paycheck. It gives me a little breathing room financially, and every now and then I can spoil myself or my daughter. Without the scholarship, it would not be possible. So this is a quote from one of the participants. The second one is, I have been able to keep my daughter at the same childcare even when I reduced my hours for a short time due to COVID, and the childcare institution was still the same. So childcare resources are a real challenge during the COVID because many childcare facilities have closed down. So this is a great help to our residents.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, I mean, that's exactly right. And, you know, we've known that childcare resources and financial assistance is so critical always. And because so many childcare facilities have closed or had reduction of hours, and folks have been in different work situations than they may have otherwise been, we've really seen a drastic increase in need in childcare resources. A lot of places have had to reduce capacity, which really puts strain and stress on our existing childcare facilities.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Did I miss one? Oh, I'm so sorry. I skipped St. Stephen's. You guys are probably wondering why I skipped over that. It was not intentional. So I will go back a little bit to St. Stephen and ask Jason if you're available to read that one. Sorry for that confusion, you all.
It looks like Jason's in the waiting room.
Oh, okay. Then we'll just shift quickly back to Kelly if you're available.
Of course.
Thanks.
Okay, so St. Stephen Housing, they operate 20 units of temporary housing for homeless families. Families work with case managers, focusing on 3 crucial areas: increasing their income, reducing barriers to obtaining houses, and finding permanent, sustainable housing. So they said between our 2 sites, we had 4 households move out this quarter. All moved to permanent housing, except for one that simply transferred between our sites. Families are staying longer in the program since the start of the pandemic, but we're starting to see more movement over the last 2 quarters. We will soon be signing families up for our Christmas Adopt a Family program. Our agency also continues to participate in King County's eviction prevention and rental assistance program, and we anticipate continuing to do so through 2022.
Thanks, Kelly. So yeah, just a little bit more context for St. Stephen. As they mentioned in their narrative, that they're seeing families stay for longer for various reasons. In previous narratives, they mentioned that there's been a significant job loss and job instability, which deeply impacts folks' ability to find and afford stable housing. And so people are staying in the transitional housing system for a little bit longer, which means that there's fewer spots available. The turnover isn't as high. So folks are staying longer, which means that folks aren't able to move in at the pace that they had been previously. But staff, housing staff are working diligently to support folks so that they are in a way able to have sustainable housing that they can afford. So I'm sorry to have moved out of order on those, but thank you so much to our committee members for sharing those stories. So one of the things that our that our committee has looked at recently this fall is making a couple of language tweaks and streamlining the priority areas that already exist. The priority areas that were determined by through the needs assessment in our last general fund funding cycle. So for this 2021 and 2022 years, the priority areas, we found that for agencies and for our committee members, some of the language was not as clear as it could have been. So there was a decision and to simplify and the categories, the language in the categories, so that it's easier for agencies to recognize which priority area they fall into. Ultimately, the combination of two of the homelessness services categories were combined into homelessness intervention, and then having one for housing stability in addition to our basic needs and job training and education categories. So the language that you see here is a little bit easier for the programs that we currently fund and programs that have previously applied that were not selected for funding to be able to see that language represented here in a way that's a little bit more clear and streamlined. Which leads us into our, oh, I'm so sorry, actually. I would actually like to take a moment here and have one of our committee members, Sue, speak a little bit to this priority area information and the work that we took, that you all took in having those changes. So I will hand it over to Sue, one of our committee members, to share a little bit there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
We looked at this, and we on the committee had a little bit of realization as we started to get the applications that there were three categories, as you probably all know, for homelessness and housing. And we started to see there wasn't real clarity on the part of our applicants. They were in what we thought was maybe the wrong category from time to time. So those were the areas that we wanted to address. And what we did was we took this, there were three categories. We took those and condensed them down to two categories and ended up with homelessness interventions. And that is the category that serves those experiencing homelessness, currently homeless, needing interventions to get them out of that situation and to serve them while they are homeless. The other category we're calling housing stability, and it's a prevention program. It's for those people who are currently in their homes, but just tipping, just kind of ready to lose their housing because maybe they need some rental assistance or utility assistance or something like that. So the two categories are for those experiencing and those we're trying to help maintain stability of their housing. And that is a condensation from three categories that we had before. So I think these are going to be a lot clearer for our applicants. And they do correspond to the King County definitions, and most of our applicants are involved in all kinds of homelessness associations, and they're going to reconcile better, I believe, to these new categories. So anything else you want me to cover on that, Kyla?
No, I think that was great. Yeah, thank you so much. So with that change in priority areas, it's one of the things that our committee is doing to lead us into our next application process. So the application process for the 2023 and 2024 funding years will begin in March. So every 2 years, there's an application funding cycle and review. For the years that we're currently in, 2021 and 2022, our committee read those applications in March of 2020. So this was right at the start of the pandemic. In addition to managing everything else, they were reading dozens and dozens of applications for funding during 2020 as well. There was another sort of unexpected funding cycle that happened in that mid-year, in that off year that does not typically happen. And this was for the CDBG CV funds. So the COVID-related funds that were awarded. Our committee read those applications in the fall of 2020, which right when they thought they were finished reading applications, there were more. And then in the spring, coming up in March, is when the next general fund application review will begin. Applications will open at the beginning of March, and will likely be open for about 4 to 5 weeks. And then the committee will review those in the summer, and then will be determined, and we'll see that in the fall of next year. So that application review process is coming up. We're doing lots of work on our end internally as staff in Human Services to reach out to agencies, make sure that folks are aware of the upcoming application process, and encourage folks to apply for funds for the much needed services that we see here in the city. I'm going to stop talking for a little bit and pass it over to Sean Parkhurst Patton, and ask if you can share a little bit about the application process and your experience on the committee with that.
Sure. Thanks, Kyla.
Thanks.
So for the 2021-22 funding cycle, our committee was asked to review and rate about 70 applications for the general fund grant process. The Human Services team does a great job of keeping us organized and on track. They asked us to complete a priority area or 2 each month, which helped keep the task of reviewing all those applications manageable. It does take a fair amount of time for us to go through and thoroughly read each application and then rate it using a scoring matrix. Depending on the length of the application, it can take up to 30 to 40 minutes each to read and rate the applications. But the scoring piece is really important because this helps Kyla and Joy rank the applications prior to the committee discussing which should receive funding. This last cycle, it felt like the impacts of the COVID pandemic were top of mind for all of us. Knowing how many households had faced layoffs as businesses had shut down, really focused our discussions on how to meet the emergent needs from COVID while also maintaining the human services safety net that so many rely on. In the end, the committee agreed on 39 applications to fund out of the 70 based on the funding amount that was available. These are really difficult decisions to make, and there was a lot of discussion around, who was funded, who was not funded, because there are so many important and worthwhile programs serving Auburn residents. In contrast, the CDBG CV grant process was much more expeditious with fewer applications to review and score due to the more limited scope of these dollars. But I think we were all pleased to know that funding would be going out quickly to meet the increased needs during the pandemic. Is there anything else you wanted me to cover, Kyla, with that?
No, that sounds great. Thank you so much. And that takes us to actually the portion where we can have a little bit of an open discussion, or if there are questions that that council has for the committee, I can stop sharing my screen because that's all that I have. I can pull it back up if folks have questions about a slide, but I'll stop sharing maybe so we can all see each other and go from there.
So it looks like Councilmember J. Raj has a question, and then Councilmember Larry Brown.
Thank you, Councilmember Malinga. My question is when Sean, when you said you accepted 39 applicants, is that when you say 39 applicants, is that for the funding or is it for homes available? Can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
I can, yeah, provide a little bit. So there's 39 programs that are receiving general fund dollars, and that's across, I think 34 different agencies. So there's a couple of agencies that have more than one program that are receiving funds. Like the Auburn Food Bank, for example, has both the food service program and their financial assistance program. So there are 39 different programs that are being funded across, I believe it's 34 or 35 different agencies that are receiving general fund dollars from Human Services. Was that your question?
So I'm not very clear on that, and that's what it is. For a second, I thought it was there's 39 families or individuals that because when you said 70 applicants applied, what does that mean? I don't really get what you're trying to say, because when you say 70 applicants, what I was thinking is there was 70 families was applied for these fundings.
I understand the question now. Yes, no, there are 72 different programs that applied for funding. So 72 programs in March submitted an application to receive Auburn funds for human service dollars. And that total request was close to $1.2 million of funding requested across those 72 different programs. Of those 72 programs, the Human Services Committee selected that 39 of those receive funding from the city. So it's agencies applying for funding from the city, not individual applicants to receive services. 39, and across those 39 programs is where the slide of the statistic, the 39 programs have provided services to the 11,000 some odd Auburn residents in the first 9 months of this year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Councilmember Malenga. First off, I want to really thank the Human Services Committee. You know, it is no small gift to our community to have folks like you that spend the time to do this work, and reading those applications. You know, I couldn't be prouder to have you in our community. So thank you for that work that you do. Also, and I'm not sure who this should be addressed to, but I really got fired up when I heard about the pilot program for the DEI training for service providers. It's what I would call a real multiplier effect, where you're going to really inject our community with, you know, a different way of thinking about things that centers everybody. And so I just really want to express my appreciation for that. Lastly, I was excited also about the workforce training aspect that I'm seeing here. And, you know, with the passage of the federal infrastructure bill, there are going to be billions of dollars in this state that is going to be spent in the next decade, you know, on building and construction projects and infrastructure. And, you know, in my real job, I'm president of the State Labor Council. So one of the things that I pay close attention to is workforce training, because, you know, while I really appreciated the priorities for 24, 23, 24, but the one for the workforce training helps, I think, cover a lot of other areas of our priorities. The other priorities are short-term and are very essential and urgent, but the workforce training in the long run will help drive down those needs. And so I really appreciate it. And, you know, Director Tate, if there's any way that I can, you know, be a resource in what perhaps might be some good areas to refer folks to in apprenticeships that are hot right now, or, I would just be willing to be that resource if that's helpful. So thank you all very much. Sorry for
I want to thank you for the offer to partner and take advantage of your expertise in areas that we might probe a little bit. There's a lot of opportunity, not just within the work of the Human Services Committee, but the work that the city does and all of the partnerships we have in our community with but we're still, I think, trying to wade through what it all means. That package is big, and there's a lot of moving parts to it, and there's a lot of opportunity within it, and we're still trying to figure that out. And I think we all will remember that you made that offer. So thank you.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that. It's been such a long slog with COVID, and so many people have suffered. But I have reason to be optimistic. I think we have a future if we can just hang on long enough.
Council Member Stearns.
Thank you, Councilmember Malanga. I just second what Councilmember Brown had to say about the amazing work that the Human Services Committee is doing. It's pretty incredible, and so I'm really glad to hear it. I had a question about one of the slides, and I think Councilmember Brown already touched on it, but it was the equity and inclusion pilot, and I wasn't really clear on. I think I missed that somehow. Can you explain who is going through that? I mean, and is that the same thing that we went through as a council? No, it's different.
It is different. So, agencies, there are programs that receive various amounts of have been awarded, for it to be reimbursed different amounts. And so for programs that are receiving $25,000 or more, there's just a handful. There's 8 different programs that are receiving those larger dollar amounts. The others are, between primarily 5,000 or so and 20,000, but there are a handful that are receiving 25,000 or possibly more, depending on the program. So for those programs receiving larger dollar amounts, those are the ones that were selected to participate or have been included with the equity and inclusion portion in their contract, which requires that the program staff and program decision makers, so supervisors and managers and direct service staff for those programs attend at least 4 hours of equity and inclusion training, and that can be something specific to what services they provide, but under the areas of institutional racism, power and privilege, and implicit bias. So something in that vein related to the services that they provide. So it was pretty open, and that's one of the things that I'm excited about in the survey that will be going out for programs too, how those trainings were, how they decided on those trainings and what that looked like for them and their experiences with that. But they got to select which training made the most sense for their program. A lot of those programs had something in-house. They already have a DEI manager or trainings that are already required for program staff for those topics already. So it wasn't a new addition to their workload. It's something that they have already worked into their programs. For 2 of the programs that are required to do this training for our contract, it was a newer component. And so it wasn't something that they already have worked into their training budget or with their program staff. So the vast majority of programs that were required to have this training it's already been infused in their work. For a couple of them, it was brand new.
You're saying that of the 8, how many finished it?
Oh, they've all done it.
Okay.
2 are requesting reimbursement, and 6 have completed it, but just are not requesting reimbursement.
Okay, so they've all done it, and then they all, and it was like for their whole agency, or was it just
For their team, for their program team?
Okay.
So yeah, the program staff and decision makers for the program, so supervisors or directors for that program.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I see Director Tate's hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on the conversation about the DEI initiative. It's something that I'm particularly proud of because it's an idea that was born out of the work of the Human Services team and the Human Services Committee. We know as a city, we've embarked upon a journey here. And it was a really cool moment when I was approached asking, about an idea about how we might be able to implement something. And at the same time, what we're doing is we're sending a message in some of these larger investments that we're making in the community that the DEI work that the city is doing is important in the agencies that we're funding too. So that was cool. I think the second part that was pretty cool is how do we figure out a way to provide a little bit of financial support for that work without taking away from the grant that we're giving them. So if they're getting a $25,000 grant, we didn't want them to take $1,000 or some amount of money out of that grant and take away from the service offering. So we figured out a way to make sure that we could supplement the budget a little bit. And we call it a pilot because maybe it has a place in every agency that we fund down the road. But we wanted to start with some of the bigger investments. And I just say kudos to the staff and the committee for developing the idea and advocating for the idea, because that's where it came from.
Thank you, Director Tate. Is there anyone else that had questions or comments or any feedback for our team? I'm going through, I don't see any hands raised at this time.
I
for
do.
me, okay, thank you, Yolanda. I didn't see you. There you go.
I just wanted to echo the same thing as the rest of the council member has said. And it's really nice to see the direction that you're taking the Human Services program. And it's nice to see new faces also with great ideas to come on board. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing, because this is a very much needed program in our city. And thank you for all the hard work you're doing. It's nice to see you, Jason. It's been a while. So anyways, thank you all.
Anyone else? Okay, so I also wanted to echo those sentiments. Thank you so much, Director Tate and Kayla Wright, for presenting today. And we really appreciate all your hard work and the rest of your staff. I know Joy is not here today, but all the work that she does with the committee as well. I also like to thank all of the Human Services Committee members that came on tonight. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you also do to support our city. With that, I think that ends this portion of our meeting. So I will turn it back over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Malinga. Kyla, did you have another comment you wanted to make before? Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So
okay.
Thank you so much for the time. I just wanted to reiterate that just to say thank you to our committee. I just wanted to make sure that they knew and that you all knew how many hours and like how much work and how challenging it is and how much I appreciate them. And just to say that on this public stage, that they're the best committee I could possibly imagine working with.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I also want to state what my fellow council members have already stated, and the work that the Human Services Committee does is invaluable to the city. So we really appreciate the committee's hard work, the reporting that comes forward now, and how much you're in tune with the residents that need help in the city. So we appreciate you all. We thank you very, very much for your efforts and what you do on the committee. Okay, council, we have quickly here one other discussion item this evening. I believe you may have all received an email from our city clerk today regarding our special focus areas. And it is that time of the year where we make the preliminary suggestions for council members serving on the special focus areas. And I say preliminary because, first of all, we have a new council member coming on board. And the mayor and I will need to meet with the new council member to look at areas of interest, special focus area for the new council member. But also, as we get started, just to kind of get a feel for where council members would like to serve in participation of the special focus areas for 2022. And then we can jot the names down for those special focus areas. The mayor and I, again, will discuss and then make the final selections as we go through that process. Mayor Backus, would you like to make any comments on that?
No, Deputy Mayor, I believe that you covered it very well. It will be important to make sure that we are aligning interests with those special focus areas, and also when we talk with our council member-elect to ensure that we have the right mix, and that most likely the deputy mayor, as practice has been, does not chair one of the special focus areas. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Okay, so council, as you are aware, we have 4 special focus areas. We have the community wellness, which we have the special focus area meeting on tonight. Finance, technology, and economic development as one other special focus area. Public works and community development, and municipal services. So currently for 2021, the community wellness focus area, Councilmember Millinga is the chair and Councilmember Trout Manuel is the vice chair. Finance, technology, and economic development, Councilmember Baggett is the chair and Councilmember Jayraj is the vice chair. Public works and community development, Councilmember Stearns is the chair and Councilmember Brown is the vice chair. And then lastly, municipal services, Councilmember Jayraj is the chair, and I currently am the vice chair for that special focus area. So council, if you would like, kind of give this an indication of what areas you would like to participate in for 2022. And we will put your name down next to those areas and then go to the next person. Councilmember Millinga.
Deputy Mayor, if I could, I would like to stay in some capacity with the Human Service Committee.
Okay. Okay, other council members? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
And I would like to stay on the Human Services.
Thank you. Councilmember Jayraj. You're muted, Councilmember.
Why do I do that?
You are now unmuted, Councilmember. Go ahead.
I would like to stay on both the committees, which is municipal and finance.
Okay. Councilmember Stearns.
I'm going to go with the whole spirit of the thing and say I'll stick with public works.
Okay. And Councilmember Brown.
I guess status quo is the way it is.
Status quo. Okay. So currently we have preliminary selections. Councilmember Millinga and Trout Manuel for community wellness. Councilmember Jayraj for finance, technology, and economic development. Council members Stearns and Brown for public works and community development. And Councilmember Jayraj for municipal services. And of course, Councilmember Baggett is unable to be here this evening with us, so we will get his take on the areas he would like to continue to serve on for 2022 and go from there. Is there any other areas of interest any other council member would like to participate in preliminarily? Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, I just express that I'm interested in all these subjects. So, whatever that, if the need is there, I'm happy to co-chair or whatever, but I just appreciate all the council members here.
Okay, thank you. And again, council, as a reminder, once we have the discussion with the newly elected council member and look at those areas of interest, we will be reviewing all that and then make the final selections and inform the council members of what special focus areas they will be serving on next year. And again, it's the chair and vice chair selections we will be looking at. And those determinations will probably be made between the council members, I would imagine, as we go forward with that. So any other discussion on this item tonight? All right, appreciate your time with that very much. Any other discussion items this evening? Okay, seeing none, we have no new business to cover, I don't believe. And with that, have a great evening, everyone, and we are adjourned. Good night.
Night.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Yes.